Hello mathematicians! Today we're going to be learning about whole numbers, specifically what they are, and then we're going to go over some examples and non-examples of whole numbers. First and foremost, let's go over the definition. So what are whole numbers? Whole numbers are counting numbers and zero. Counting numbers are numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Although 0 is not a counting number, it is still part of our whole numbers. So just be mindful of that. Now, numbers that are not whole numbers are fractions, decimals, and even negative numbers. So just be mindful that those are not whole numbers. Here I have a table, and we're going to go over some examples and non-examples of whole numbers. So we already mentioned that 0 is a whole number. And then we have our counting numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we could just keep going with that pattern. Any counting number is a whole number. Now let's go through our non-examples. Here I have 1.5. So this is not a whole number because we have a fraction here. Although we have one whole, we have half, which makes this not a whole number. So our whole numbers does not include fractions or decimals unless that fraction simplifies to a whole number. Here we also have 9/2. 9/2 is an improper fraction that does not simplify to a whole number. I can rewrite that as a mixed number, however, it's not going to give us an exact whole number. Therefore, it is not a whole number. After that, I have 5/10. Now, this is a part of a whole. So 5/10 is half of 1. And because that's not an exact number and because that doesn't simplify to an exact number, it is not considered a whole number. After that, I have 4 and 53/100, which is repeating. And again, this is not a whole number because it is a decimal. Finally, I have -2. Although -2 does not have a fraction or a decimal, it is a negative number. And negative numbers are not whole numbers. Now that we've gone through some numbers that are and aren't whole numbers, let's go over some real-world examples of numbers that are. So first I have dollar bills. And dollar bills is an example of a whole number because we have ones, we have fives, we have tens, we have 20s, we have $100 bills, and those are all exact bills. Now if I had cents, that would be an example that's not a whole number because that's a part of a dollar. But because dollar bills are exact dollar quantities, they are examples of whole numbers. Then we have the number of the states in the U.S. So the U.S. has 50 states, and we could go through them on a map and count them. Starting with 1, 2, 3, and so forth, and eventually we'd get to 50. So examples of whole numbers would be the number of states a person has visited. So maybe a person has visited 0 states in the U.S. Maybe they visited 9, or maybe they visited all 50. So states are an example of whole numbers, okay? Because a person could either visit 0 or they could visit a few of the states, maybe not all, or maybe even all of them. However, whichever the case, those are all whole numbers. And then lastly, I have number of people. So the number of people is a whole number because in a room we could have 0 people, we could have a person, we could have 2 people, we could have a whole bunch of people, but at the end of the day you can't have a negative person, you can't have a fraction of a person or a decimal of a person. So the number of people that we have in a room or in a building or in a city or in a state, those are all examples of whole numbers, okay? And that's pretty much it for what our real numbers are and their examples and non-examples.